expressed on this program are not necessarily those of CNS Channel 6.
Good day to you, Guyana, and welcome to another edition of Facing the Nation. I am Malika Ramsey. Thanks so very much for tuning in. We have another informative program for you today. Not so many features as we brought to you last week and the week before. I keep reminding you that because Facing the Nation is brought to you at the end of every week, I try to lump some of the important issues and events that would have took place earlier in the week. So, and then I know there are times when this program is also rebroadcast on Channel 9 on Sundays. So what I try to do is to bring a package of the things that would have occurred during the week on Facing the Nation. I've been doing that for the last 3 weeks or so, but today I'm going to do it slightly different. Last week, and I know some of you would have messaged me and so on, those of you who missed it. And it's on some of the Facebook pages, for example, Ministry of the Presidency and so on. Last week I did promise you a piece, at least the President's address during the observance of Forbes Burnham's death anniversary. That was last week. I promised you that, but we ran out of time last week. I'm going to try to bring it to you this week because I think the address is only about 7 minutes or so. But we have other matters to discuss before we do that. I see some of you are still trying to milk and grind the life out of the so-called influx of Haitians here. Of course, you know, those of you who watched last week, the Minister of Citizenship, the Honorable Winston Felix, he addressed that issue last week, but I still see some people trying to look and find an issue where there is none. Those of you who are tuned in now and you missed last week's program, go to my YouTube channel and, of course, my Facebook page. That program is there in its entirety. I was considering rebroadcasting that this week, but I decided against that because we have some issues that need to be addressed. As you know, one of the highlights of this week was the fact that we waited patiently on the Chief Justice ruling regarding the house-to-house registration. I did say it earlier on social media, the fact that the Chief Justice ruled that the current house-to-house registration exercised by GCOM, which the government is in support of, it is not unconstitutional, it is not illegal. So I celebrated when I heard that because it reinforced what myself and so many persons in our society would have been saying for some time now, that the gentleman, of course, from Rob Street, and of course, this Channel 6 studios are in Rob Street, so we're not very far from him. I call it the ramblings of a madman because some of the things that he says sometimes, that he says weekly, it's just ignorance that he's trying to teach the population, and I'm really happy that the CJ ruled that the house-to-house registration, the current house-to-house registration is in fact legal. I know there've been a war of words since then. Some people are taking certain parts of her ruling, whether it was a ruling or an opinion, to say that, oh, they feel vindicated that, oh, even though she said that the house-to-house registration is legal, there is another aspect. And I'm not going to get into the details on that. I always tell people, you can give an opinion, but certain things you refrain from commenting publicly, especially when you're not fully learned on it. I am not a lawyer, so I'm not going to sit here and try to pull and analyze every single thing that she said. But the bottom line is, the main issue, the initial issue, is the fact that the current house-to-house registration exercised by GCOM is legal. So that is for all who were preaching that it's illegal, and I know I got some updates from some of the GCOM workers who said that some persons, when they visited them, they said, you know, not everyone treated them bad. You know, a few weeks ago, I talked about the fact that some people were losing their dogs on them. But in this case, some told the GCOM workers that, look, we're not going to do it because it is not legal. There were even some said, okay, look, we're going to get registered, but just know that we understand that it's illegal. So again, you can rest assured that it is legal, and I'm urging every single person to get registered and do not listen to the ignorance being spouted by a gentleman who is supposed to be a leader and have, such a large following, and I'm not talking about a social media following, I'm talking about a large political following, because whether we like it or not, he does have a large political following, obviously, because it's an entire political party. But enough of that for now. It is my pleasure to welcome back to Facing the Nation. He was here a few months ago, but it was a very, very short program when we had him on. He was talking about an event the PNC had, but it's my pleasure to welcome back to Facing the Nation today. He is an executive member of the People's National Congress Reform. He was recently appointed one of the directors at the Guyana National Newspaper Limited, and he is also the Regional Information Officer in Region 3. Again, it is my pleasure to welcome back to our program Mr. Ganesh Mahipaul. Ganesh, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Malika.
So fabulous to have you. And viewers, in all my ramblings, I did not mention what is maybe the largest highlight of the week, which would have been the results, the CXC results, and so many of our students did very well. And Ganesh, I want to immediately hand it over to you because I know that you want to touch on the CXC results before we even discuss any other thing.
Thank you again for having me, Malika. Let me start as rightfully so, the young people that have written the Caribbean examination. I know our country has recorded the highest pass rate ever, and I think that is that's one achievement to celebrate. And for me, it gives testimony to the fact that our government is focusing on improving the education sector, because we do believe that an educated nation is a rich nation.
Exactly.
We have done a lot from 2015 to date in education. We have done a lot in infrastructure in terms of making the school environment more conducive to learning. We have repainted schools. We have rebuilt some schools. We have basically made the environment in such a way that teachers have a different psyche in how they're approaching the syllabus, and because they are more comfortable, the environment that they function in allows the students to receive the knowledge easier, and also teachers benefit from salary increases. I know that some schools are also benefiting from the teachers, the burden that the teachers had during the previous administration is no longer there. Some teachers told me that they are now receiving termly schemes from the ministry, so they are focused more on the notes of lessons, and they have more time to deal with the students directly. And I believe we do need to give some level of appreciation to the APNU AFC for what they have done in education. I was boasting a couple of mornings back on our NGSA results, and now I have the privilege of, and I did say then that I was very optimistic that our CXC result is going to be excellent, and so said, so done, because we have seen what has happened in our education sector, the transformation that the David Granger-led administration is focused on. I'm not going to sit here and tell you all is good and glorious. It has been 4 years. Transformation has happened. Far-flung regions are benefiting. We see our indigenous people are celebrating education also. We see that we are now hearing about certain schools that we never knew existed. And I feel so honored to know that these far-flung regions, regions 1, 2, 9, 7, 8, and even 10, they are on the map once again, and they're celebrating an excellent education system where more still has to be done. And I was even happy when I heard our president Granger say that we're going to return to free education at a tertiary level. I have always been one that said education must never be a gift to the rich and a dream for the poor. The poor must be equally able to access education, especially at the tertiary level. and that will be returned to our country, and I'm happy to hear that. And I know that a David Granger-led administration is the best administration that can educate this nation to the point where we will become a wealthy nation, because an educated man is a wealthy man. And allow me at this point in time to shout out a very good friend of mine who wrote the Caribbean examination. She received 8 grades 1 and 4 grades 2, and she's from
Wonderful.
Parfait Harmony, Miss Kelly Wilson, and she did work study in our department at the regional administration.
Wonderful.
And we're very happy for her, but equally so, we are very, very happy for the entire region. We have seen improvements in the entire region and countrywide. The analysis is not fully out, but I can tell you, last year we had 90% matriculation rate at the West Demerara Secondary School. We had 88% matriculation rate at Zeeburg Secondary School, and we had a number of schools that went above 50% matriculation, such as Stewartville, Essequibo Island Secondary,
And this is
Leg 1
basically new
Secondary.
in the last decade.
Very much new in the last 5 years, because it never happened before. Some people don't even know where Essequibo Island Secondary School is, where Leg 1 Secondary School is. So it feels so nice to know that these schools are excelling, and we must understand and appreciate that when they excel on the back of a good foundation that the school is now having, and they excel on the back of knowing that the burden that teachers once faced, they're not facing it now.
Okay, all right, great. And it really is truly great that we began the program on that note, whereby we're congratulating our young people. I want to stay on the note of young people, but older young people. One of the things we would have been seeing recently, and viewers, this is where we transform to our political conversation. One of the things we would have been seeing recently, and especially for those of you who are really big on social media, some people actually work there. They do work on social media, so we're clear on everything that is happening. One of the things that we've been seeing is, one would like to call it jumping ship, switching, whatever. And the reason I'm asking you this, Ganesh, because and viewers, as I did say in the beginning, Ganesh is also an executive member of the People's National Congress Reform. Older youth, in the sense of youth. We have seen not only youth, but we have seen some members switching from the PNC and loudly doing that, I might add, publicly doing it. It is not quiet, and expressing some dissatisfaction with the party in itself, the PNC. And viewers, here, it's always a teaching moment here. I always like to remind you that the PNC, the People's National Congress Reform, is the largest political party within the APNU coalition, APNU-AFC coalition, of course, governing party, governing partnership. We've seen switches, again, loudly, some quietly, but most of it loudly, expressing some amount of dissatisfaction with the People's National Congress Reform and with the government. Everyone knows my opinion on some of these things. The reason I'm raising this, what is your take on it, especially in response to people who would now want to say clearly something is wrong inside of your party, and something is wrong inside of your partnership, and inside of your coalition, and by extension inside of your government, if we've had young persons who would have been struggling with you, for want of a better word, struggling with you for all the years that you've been in administration, and now you're in government, and they have decided to switch. And I might add too, that this switch didn't begin in 2018 or 2019. We saw it with one particular young lady. We saw that since before the 2015 elections. What would you say to people who are now saying, well, clearly something is happening within your ranks? Because the most recent switch is a former executive member of the youth arm of the PNCR. What are your thoughts, and what do you want people to know about all of that? And I know you can't speak for the entire party at this time, but what would be the response? How do you explain it? Why are people, switching to the PPP that we have tried to hold accountable for so many years of some of the rotten things that would have occurred under their tenure as government?
Malika, we have selfless politicians, and we have selfish politicians. When I decided to enter politics, I had a choice. I was at the University of Guyana at the time, and the late Winston Sri Paul Murray saw what I had in terms of my qualities, and he asked me to join the PNC. I didn't decide there and then to join the PNC. I didn't say, yes, I'm going to go with the PNC. I was sitting on the council of the University of Guyana with the likes of Gail Teixeira, Bibi Shadiq, Odinga Lumumba, Rupert Roopnarine, Vincent Alexander. Those names are very high names in politics. And Gail Teixeira also asked me to join the People's Progressive Party.
Oh.
So I had to make a choice. In fact, I could have chosen not to do it at all. But here I had the PPP asking me to come on board. This was in 2008. And here I had the PNC asking me to come on board. I went home and I studied both political parties. I looked at the policies, I looked at the principles, and I looked at the framework that surrounded the PNC and surrounded the PPP. Mind you, the PPP was in office at that time. And what I saw was there was no real democracy in the PPP. I was against the 35 persons alone that sit at their central exec level and make decisions for all their followers without opening up an avenue for the followers to have a say. As opposed to the PNC, where you have frequent general councils, where you have frequent congresses, and where you have frequent CEC meetings, you have group level meetings, you have conferences at each region. So the democracy that existed in the PNC for me allowed me to have a say in what was happening in the party, and I know that my say was going places. So I said to myself, I can't join the PPP, because if the PPP tell me run and jump and swim, I'll have to do it. But if the PNC tells me to do it, I can question it, and I can associate myself with a discussion on it to decide whether I will do it. So the PNC for me is a more democratic association, is a more democratic political party that allowed me to be who I am. So I subscribed to the PNC politics, to the PNC principles, to the PNC objectives, to the PNC rationale, the PNC thinking. I subscribed myself to that. Now, I will be a hypocrite should I now decide that I've already examined the PPP, saw that they have nothing in keeping with my principles. I will be a hypocrite to leave the PNC and go with the PPP, because I've already established that the PPP does not have the principles that I once subscribed to. And if I, as a man, will compromise on my principles, then I'm not a good leader. Because leaders must have firm principles. They must have firm beliefs that they keep and hold dear to themselves, that they fight for in any political forum they are a part of, or any political party they're a part of. And I'm saying that people who just jump ship, they are opportunistic people. They are people who compromise on their principles. They are therefore not good leaders, and they are selfish in their politics. And they are doing it because they want gains for themselves as opposed to making the country and the world a better place. I am not in this politics for self-aggrandizement, nor am I in this politics for enrichment of one's self. I'm in it to know that I can wholeheartedly fight for the people of our country. And when they are uplifted from their struggle, I am uplifted from my struggle too, because it is being done in a collective fashion. The PNC subscribes to that. The PPP does not. And even if you have been in this political party, the PNCR, for so many years, you subscribed to their principles, and to say that you're jumping now to go with the PPP, it is showing that the same political party you once coursed out, you once had an issue with, the political party that was not doing what was right as recent as 2015 January, or 2014 or 2013, and suddenly You are now saying to me that the PPP is the best political party? Suddenly, and the PPP hasn't changed their characters. Irfan Ali was there in 2013, 2014, 2015. Jack Dio was there, Gail Teixeira was there, Odinga Lumumba was there. All of them, they were there when they were doing mischievous harm to our country. And now you have left the PNC to go there. I am not saying that you have no right to leave. If you feel that you were disenfranchised, if you feel you were hurt, and if you feel you were disrespected and you want to leave, fine. My problem is when you leave from where you have this, where you have subscribed to the one that you were once chastising. Now, I said to myself, I said, you could have left and you could have gone to Anog, or you could have gone to Liberty and
Ganesh.
Justice Party. No, I was telling myself that because those are newly formed parties. But you have left and you have went to the PPP, which is at the
But
second.
at the end of the day, you said it. You talked about selfish gains. I mean, and again, this is for people who are just in it for whatever they can get.
Yes.
If you leave and you go to any one of the new political parties, can you supposedly gain as much? Because let's face the fact is, viewers, this has been that way for a very long time. I know people are trying to fight against it. The fact is we have two political giants in this country. The others are babies. I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but the fact is you're babies. So, I mean, I understand your maybe a suggestion, but if you're so much in this for selfish gains, you're not going to leave the current administration, the APNU, to go to one of the smaller parties. What can you, how can you gain?
And that is what I was coming back to show you. If you are a selfless politician and your intentions were clear that you are going to fight for the people's upliftment, then as a selfless politician, if you're going to leave a political party, you are not going to go to the one that you are a part or that you are a team and you are against their principles. You're not going to go there, but it shows selfishness. It shows selfishness because you have gone to the other mass party with the expectation that, you know what, you're going to get something better than what.
Let me be somewhat of the antagonist here. Again, viewers, you all know where my political affiliations and my political loyalties lie. But let me say this. One of the arguments is that, all right, at least a few of them who have supposedly, or not supposedly, who've suddenly switched are young persons who felt, you did use the word disenfranchised and disenchanted and so on. They switched because, look, we're young people and we weren't supported and we weren't pushed, and, you know, what is your response to that argument to say, well, we didn't just get up overnight and do this, you know, our leaders were not paying attention to us? Your response to that?
I don't believe that's a fair statement. But before I touch on that, I want to also make it known here that though we may have one or two or three or as far as 10 that has left the PNCR and by extension the APNU AFC, we have had hundreds that came on board.
Okay.
And we should take note of
Great.
that. I can personally say that in region number 3, for example, the membership of the PNCR has grown and has grown significantly. I am in constant communication with persons that look like me, and they have indicated
Happy
that
that
they
you
are
raised that.
supporting this coalition government. They are in their small groupings and they have seen transformation and they have recognized investment that was made in infrastructure, in education, in agriculture, in health, in general administration. They have recognized it. Far-flung areas in our region are now open out. People know that they exist, and they have signaled their intention to continue with the APNU AFC government. They have also said to me that they understand that the conditions the APNU AFC government faced in government was different from what the PPP had. When the PPP was in government, these are things that people told me. When the PPP was in government, they had a stable environment that they were functioning with. The APNU AFC came to government in 2015. They had the Venezuelan crisis. That was a big issue. The Petro-Caribbean deal fell apart. The rice for oil deal, that fell completely apart. Suriname was trying to say that part of Berbice belonged to them. We know that the sugar industry was on life support machine. All these were circumstances that the APNU AFC came to office with, and even though they came to office with all of these hardships, and even though they were fairly new to government, they still managed to give teachers an increase in salary. They still managed to give public servants a raise in salary. They still managed to increase old age pension. They still managed to increase public assistance. They still managed to provide better schoolings for our school children. They still managed to give a better health care in the sense of providing various different sections in the health sector, like Lenora Hospital now boasts a maternity ward. There are various other health centers that were opened out across the country. They still managed to invest billions of dollars in infrastructure, at the sea defense especially. I have been telling people, you are looking at your small street that may have a pothole or two, and some of the streets are, of course, in a bad state. I'm not going to run away from that, but you had a choice to make. The government had a choice to make. Do we spend billions of dollars to fix internal streets, or do we spend billions of dollars to fix a vulnerable seawall when we know climate change is upon us, when we know the rise of tide is upon us, when we had a situation at Pagwa Day when waters were running over the seawall? Billions of dollars were spent on our sea defense to protect us here on the coastland. That, for me, was the priority. Because had we spent money on the inside and left that seawall vulnerable, God knows what could have happened. That water could have washed all of us away. But our government made an informed decision, and they spent billions of dollars on a fragile sea defense that what the PPP left us with. And now we have a sound sea defense that can withstand integrity, and we must recognize the billions of dollars that were spent there. And I'm saying that to tell you that the government did so much under the circumstances that they came to office. But to come back to your point and your question in terms of young people, young people were not left out, as they may say. For me, there are different levels of governance.
Okay.
And you have the local authority, first of all, that this government reintroduced. And a number of young people are serving on the local government platform, and they are being exposed.
And trained, because
And
that is the
exactly,
important thing.
so that they're climbing the ladder. At the regional democratic level, you have them there also. In various ministries, you have them functioning also. Leadership is not about you just holding a ministerial position or you holding a parliamentarian position. Leadership is about you taking control of a situation and make it grow, and make it grow in such a way that it becomes positive for the environment. I am the Regional Information Officer of Region 3, and I believe I have been doing a fantastic job in terms of what my portfolio
Requires.
entails or requires. Then you have the NDCs, RDCs, the people in the ministries. You see, young people, they are now understanding the system pretty well. There are certain things I have learned at Region 3 there that I don't believe I could have understood had I not been in the system. So the first thing for young people is not about you holding a ministerial position, bang on, first thing, bam, 2015 government came to power, here, take a minister position. No, or a parliamentarian. We are in the system, we know the system, we are equipping ourselves with the knowledge of the system, so that when we do hold the ministerial position, and when we do hold the parliamentarian position, we know what is it that we are going to do. We know what is it that we can expect from our various programs that fall under our ministry or our departments. So young people are in the system. If you are to examine how many young people are in the system, there's a lot. There's a lot. I know that Region 3 employed, from 2015 to date, we employed over 3,000 plus young people. They were employed. But these are not people that will come to the forefront as politicians and so on.
But apart from them coming to the forefront too, I think it always comes back to the information that we put out in the public domain. It is necessary for, and I'm happy that you're saying that more than 3,000 would have been employed from 2015 to now, because that is an important figure to put out there, important statistics to let people understand that, look, despite, because a lot of, and I'm saying us here because some of the young people within the coalition and within the government would have criticized our leaders, saying that, look, you have not done enough for young people. The difference, however, is that even though some of us will sit there and we will say, we try to call out our own leaders, we're not going to, as you said, I think you used the word integrity before, we're not going to compromise our morals and our integrity to say that all along we believed in the ideologies of the PNC and the APNU, but suddenly because you can't get what you want and you're not happy with your leaders, you have suddenly decided that you now believe in the, well, if you want to call those ideologies, but ideologies of the PPP. So I guess it comes back to also putting the information out there.
That's true. And I want to also say to you, Malika, the PPP is making noise about 10,000 sugar workers or something like that lost their jobs.
They like numbers. Remember they promised, I think it's 50,000, am I correct? 50,000 jobs, they like numbers.
But you are saying that 10,000 lost their jobs, but you're not telling us how many of them were employed in the system, the government system. And I'm saying to you that in Region 3, a number of sugar workers that were off because of Wales Sugar Estate, they are now employed with the regional administration, and some of them, not all of them, some of them are employed with the regional administration, some of them are employed elsewhere, and I have interacted with some of them who have indicated to me that they are now seeing a different sense of work, and they're now feeling a different sense of environment, and they welcome the change that has happened. I'm not saying that to justify the ones that are not working how hard they are, but the system is going to be, I believe that the system is of such that sugar, we had to scale it down because we could not have allowed the other sectors to suffer upon the survival
as have been
sugar.
happening previously.
And it is known to the world that the PPP kept putting people to work in the sugar industry because it was their political base, and they were not seeing it as a viable business, but they saw it as a political gain for themselves. And our country, our people must not suffer at the hands of that.
Well said indeed. Viewers, if you're now tuning in, of course, this is a conversation with Ganesh Mahipaul. I did say he is the Regional Information Officer for Region 3, along with a number of other hats, including executive member in the People's National Congress Reform. Ganesh, one of the things that you touched on a bit, and I really want to raise it, because especially in social media, it is, not only is it touchy, it turns us, and when I say us, I mean Guyanese, it turns us into monsters, and that is the race issue. You talked about people switching from the PNC to the PPP suddenly, and you also raised the fact that there have been more who came on board with the PNC, and of course by extension the APNU in the current administration. You talked about the fact that these are people who look like you. The fact is, I am Afro Guyanese. Ganesh is Indo-Guyanese. Some people are saying, look, we need to move away from that. At the end of the day, you don't need to put Afro or Indo in front of it. You are Guyanese. But the fact is, what is our reality? Our reality is when there are times like these, closer to election times, and there's political ramblings and so on, we, especially on social media, we see it coming out. All of a sudden, you know, I'm not going to use the terms that we use because people use them in a derogatory sense, but it becomes as though it is Indo against Afro. How do we address this? And the fact is, whether people want to accept this or not, the opposition, even though they like to preach that they're not racist, they often use it, and you see it coming from some of their supporters on social media. Oh, this black, the Indian. How do we deal with that, Ganesh, and your sentiments?
Malika, you know, I just love the PNC, and you said that, and that is why I'm going to tell you why I love the PNC. I have seen that the People's Progressive Party, Civic, whenever they wanted to raise this whole ugly head of racism, they would have a black person saying something on Facebook, a small 30-second something, but it's a black person with the red T-shirt, and they will be shouting out, Granger go, we punishing, all kinds of certain sentiments they will express. But the sad thing is that they put a black person to do it, because they're trying to indirectly send a message with the hope that, you know what, the black people are all going to come to the PPP. You don't think the PNC could have done the same? The PNC could have gotten Indian people that are with them. They could have used me. They could have used many other Indians. And they could have put out little,
Those clips,
clips also with Indian people to say, wow, this government has done well. Let's go with this government. They could have done it. But they do not subscribe to those kinds of politics. They subscribe to honesty and integrity. They subscribe to getting things done for the upliftment of the people. So I'm saying to you, and I'm saying to your viewers, the PNC could have retaliated to the PPP by using Indian people to do it, but they have not done it because they do not see Indian people like that in their PNC. It is very sad that the PPP see black people like that in their political party. But the PNC does not see black and Indian. The PNC see the human race. And the same way the PNC treats the Afro Guyanese, the Indo Guyanese are treated the same way. And I have no apologies for making that statement because I know it is true. It is very sad, however, that on the other side, it is not happening like that. And the evidence is there on Facebook. Why is it that you're not seeing the Indian people in the PPP crying out, but you're seeing them taking a black man from here or a black man from there to do it? You understand me? So, but the Ministry of the Presidency, Department of Social Cohesion, Culture, Youth and Sports, I believe they have really done an excellent job over the past 4 years in the field of educating our people, in the field of sensitizing our people on racism, on racist remarks, and the need for it to just go its peaceful way. I know that that ministry was created because of the tension that was in our country, and President Granger recognized that we cannot as a nation move forward for the betterment of our children and our grandchildren by having a divisive or a divided society. And we cannot move forward by having one grouping of our people believe they're more supreme than another grouping. We have to move forward knowing that we are looking beyond the color of our skin or the texture of our hair. And he recognized that. And the creation of the Social Cohesion Department played an important role in reducing the tension that was in this country because of racism and racist remarks. It still exists, but I didn't expect it to be removed completely for 4 years. It still exists. But another form of removing it is through the education sector, because the people who are educated, they view a government on issues and not on race. And we have seen that over the years, that what is more important to educated young people is issues, as opposed to who's black and who's Indian and who's red and who's white. And I will say that for the 23 years the People's Progressive Party was in government, they did not see it fit to educate the people of this nation. They did not see it fit to invest in education, because they know an educated nation will see through their thinking, will see through what they're about. It will cause empowerment. And because they're a political party, as I have mentioned earlier, one whereby they subscribe to what 35 say that you must do, they are afraid to educate the nation, because if they do that, people from the bottom will start to retaliate. But the PNC has always been a political party that enjoys and embraced education. 19, when free education was introduced, it was Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham that caused it to come on stream. It was 1994, under the People's Progressive Party, that they would have put a fee to education. At that time, it was 1,000 US dollars, 127,000 Guyana dollars equivalent. They're the one who violated the Constitution there and then, because the Constitution said every citizen is entitled to free education from nursery to tertiary. They violated our Constitution in 1994 by putting a fee to education. But you don't hear them talking about that violation. You don't hear the lawyers that they have saying that, you know what, we were in a constitutional crisis then.
These days, they do no wrong. They're angels.
But Malika, I'm saying to your viewers, I'm saying to them that an educated nation is an empowered nation. An empowered nation is a rich nation. And I am going to say to you that with a David Granger-led administration, your children, your grandchildren, and the future generation is assured of an education which is real power. And that real power will cause us to spend our resources in the right manner.
And Ganesh, I think that's an appropriate way to wrap up the heavier part of our discussion indeed. Before I let you go though, I did talk earlier about the fact that the GCOM, the current GCOM house-to-house registration exercise is in fact legal. I just want to get some idea, and again, viewers, remember too, he's also speaking from a place of regentry. I want to get some idea from you in terms of what you've been able to observe and the information that you've gathered in terms of how is the exercise, the registration exercise going in Region 3? Are people responding? I know we may have seen somewhat of a more interest now that the CJ has ruled that it is legal. But even before that ruling, I just want to get an idea from you in terms of how the registration exercise has gone in the Region 3 communities.
Region 3 and I think Region 6. Prior to the CJ's ruling, prior to the Chief Justice ruling, Region 3 and Region 6 were actually two of the regions that recorded the highest rate of registration. And it's on it's kind of shocking because those are the two
supposedly
regions that are supposed
belong
to be,
because you know they own things.
And maybe that is a reminder that they are slowly losing their grounds in these regions. But however, there were areas that refused to register because they said it was illegal. But the majority of areas registered. I think we have over 200,000+ persons that have thus far registered, and that's remarkable. I believe the registration exercise is necessary. It is necessary because we need to have an updated, proper, legitimate, lively list. There is no question about the previous list. It has been expired, it's dead. And I have oftentimes likened the list to that of a driver's license. Imagine, Malika, you applied for a driver's license in 2015. And when you applied for this driver's license in 2015, they granted you car. And it expires in 2020. But it's only car you had in 2015. But in 2016, you decided to add on motorcycle. 2017, you added on truck. 2018, you added on tractor. 2019, you added on bus. But they all still expire in 2020. So even though you had that one list, and you had the continuous cycle of claims and objections, the list expired April 30th. Your license expired 2020. What is it that you have to do? You have to go and get a new license. Therefore, what is it that we have to do as a country? We have to go and get a new list. I think that's common sense. And I'm happy that the CJ saw it in the same light. Maybe she didn't examine it that way, how I did, because I'm no lawyer. But she has ruled that house-to-house registration is legal. And when you look at the way Anil Nandalal came out of the courtroom and you saw his facial expression, you could have tell that he was very upset at what the ruling was about, and you could have tell that he was frantic and he was very much
He practically
he was
said
taken aback, and he said, we're gonna appeal, and so on.
And then hours later,
between 2 to 3 hours, the PPP put a complete spin on the CJ's ruling and said that they were vindicated and they had it their way and they're happy about this and they're happy about that. The CJ made a ruling that the government was holding as a position all the time.
that the house
All
of
along we had
registration
that position.
was legal.
So if there is anything that we know out of the CJ's ruling, is that the government of the day was guiding the nation in the correct form.
Exactly. And Ganesh, I think that is an appropriate note to wrap up our discussion on. I mean, it's always a pleasure having you coming and sharing with us, especially when you give updates with Region 3. I know you have a new hat. I'm not going to quiz him yet on the recently added hat. I think he was recently appointed director of the Guyana National Newspaper Limited. As you know, the way it's configured, it's more than one director. How many of you, Ganesh?
7.
It's 7 directors, so I know they have a lot to discuss, so I'm not going to put him under any pressure to put anything in the public domain regarding the works of that board as yet, but I know you are not only a decent, a genuine and a substantial addition to the board, so again, congratulations on that
Thank you very much.
new position, and keep doing the great job that you're doing.
Thank you.
All right. Viewers, if you're now tuning in, this would have been a very informative conversation with Mr. Ganesh Mahipaul, who is one of the directors of the Guyana National Newspaper Limited. He is a central executive member of the People's National Congress Reform, and of course, most importantly, at this point, he is the Regional Information Officer in Region 3. If you missed the conversation, of course, it will be uploaded to my YouTube channel in another 2 or 3 hours, and it will also be posted to my Facebook page. We'll take a very short break. On the other side of the break, I will ask our operators to go straight to a piece of, if not the entire thing, depending on how much time we have, a piece of President Granger's address at the was it last week? Yes, it was last week at the observation of President Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham's death anniversary. I think it was the 34th. It's the 34th year, so it's the 34th death anniversary. So this is Facing the Nation. Of course, we'll have much more for you.
Vice President Sidney Allicock, Honorable Dr. George Norton, Vice Chairman of the People's National Congress Reform, Honorable Amna Ali, General Secretary, Honorable Ronald Vulcan, Treasurer, other members of the Central Executive Committee of the People's National Congress Reform, members of the National Assembly and Cabinet, members of the family of the late Comrade Forbes Burnham, regional executives, executives of the municipalities, members of the religious communities, distinguished invitees, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Forbes Burnham, Guyana's first Prime Minister and Executive President and founder and leader of the People's National Congress, is remembered for his peerless contribution to national development. Today, above all, we recall his achievements in the field of educational development. Forbes Burnham was born in a colonial society in which schools were controlled largely by the churches. Many were overcrowded and under-equipped. There were few and far between in rural and hinterland regions. Forbes Burnham became the first elected Minister of Education in British Guyana in the short-lived popular administration of 1953. He was elected Premier in 1964 at the age of 41 years and set about the task of laying the foundation for the evolvement of an education nation. He believed that public education was the cornerstone of social justice. He announced in a broadcast to the nation, and I quote, "Education is the cornerstone of equality and one of the chief instruments for the abolition of snobbery and the removal of discrimination." He aspired to establish an education system in which rural and hinterland schools would be as efficient as those on the coastline. He believed that if the nation was to improve its citizens' quality of life, it had to provide them with a high quality of education. Forbes Burnham's first decade in office, 1964 to 74, was one of tremendous transformation in the public education system, making it more resilient and more relevant to the national situation at the time and to our people's aspirations for the future. He reinforced the bases of universal primary and secondary education and moved tertiary education from being the privilege of an elite few to an entitlement for everyone. He augmented overall attendance and school enrollment and built new primary and secondary schools, including the first residential school for indigenous children at St. Ignatius in the Rupununi, and later a second in the Burimawaini. He built modern multilateral schools on a regional basis in the Pomeroon Supanam at Anna Regina, in the Demerara Mahica, in the Mahica Berbice region, in East Berbice Quarantine at Ramsey, in the Upper Demerara Berbice region, and in Georgetown. They still stand today as monuments, as testimony to his commitment to regional public education. He built community high schools and technical institutes, opened the first campus of the University of Guyana and the Cyril Potter College of Education at Turkine, all with the aim of providing the best education for our post-independence generation. Forbes Burnham gave effect to free public education by expanding opportunities for all. He entrenched free education as an entitlement in the Constitution of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, which still mandates at Article 27 that, and I quote, "every citizen has the right to free education from nursery to university." We are encouraged by his example. We are inspired by his vision. We, his heirs and successors, recommit to perpetuating his legacy of free public education. Today we remember him with reverence and respect.
Brief sentiments there from His Excellency, the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Brigadier David Granger. And, he talked about education. And Ganesh Mahipaul himself spoke about education. He, gave somewhat of a synopsis of where we were in terms of education and where we are now. I want to take this opportunity again to say congratulations to all those students who did exceedingly well at the CXC. The results proved that they did exceedingly well. The ones who did satisfactory well, and the ones who their results were not so satisfactory. I just want to take this opportunity, though, to remind especially parents who are listening. I think we've been saying this for the last 5 or 6 years. Your grades at the National Grade 6 Assessment, even at the CXC, the Caribbean Examinations Council, they do not determine they don't necessarily determine or define who or what you become in life. So those persons who wrote a number of CXC subjects and you're not necessarily satisfied with how you did, just understand that this is not the end of the road. And I would hope that parents would, with the amount of things that we go through as adults, that we've gone through and possibly are still to go through as adults, I trust that you would remind them that their CXC results are not, even to the ones who did exceedingly well. You don't want them to think that, okay, this is it, I have arrived, because the fact is, the reality, our reality, especially in this part of the world, your CXC results, that's not the end of it. Some people, I know stories where some people are walking around with 10 CXC subjects, even more, and they're in jobs that are not necessarily satisfactory to them. The pay is not as much as they would hope when you've gotten more than 10 CXC subjects, especially if they're all ones. So I want to take this opportunity to remind parents, let them understand that, look, whether you've done exceedingly well, in a satisfactory manner or an unsatisfactory manner, this is not the end of the road. You have a very, very far way to go. The irony is there are some persons out there who don't even have one single CXC subject, and they've become business tycoons because they've found other ways to grow and other ways to develop themselves. Mind you, I am not saying that to tell any child or teenager who is preparing to write CXC, that you should just sit back and have a laugh. You put your best into things. You always put 100%. Put your heart and soul into things, and you somewhere along the line, you will reap the benefits. You will receive the benefits from it. But just keep in mind, your CXC results are not the end. You have a far way to go. Some people go on to university level. Some people go on to college, whether it's locally or internationally. Some people go immediately after CXC. They have no choice but to go on the job because people need to work. Not everyone is fortunate to come from families, where they're financially stable and can support a teen, an older teen, or even a young adult going to school. So some people have to work immediately. And there are times when those same people who go on the job immediately, they soar, and sometimes they soar higher than those persons who would have gone to universities and so on for so many years, because that is just the way life works. So again, whether your child or children, siblings, families, relatives, whatever, whether they've done exceedingly well or not so well, please support them. I always like to remind people, just as I said earlier, I'm no lawyer, I'm no doctor, but there's something called depression, and that's real. And if you don't support them or you try to make them feel less than a human being, you're going to end up with additional problems on their hands. Yes, it is okay for them to feel a bit down or sad or whatever for a day or two, but the next day you get up and you move on. You look at what your options are. All right, I didn't do so well at CXC. What next can I do? Can I go next year and do 2 or 3 other subjects that would get me into UG or that would get me on the job? Or can I go immediately and work? And, obviously you work, you get money, you'll be able to probably further your studies. Always look at your other options. Once you're alive, once you're here, you're present, you're breathing, you're living, all your faculties are intact, it is never the end of the line. Even though in your head you may not have planned for a plan B, you may not have put forward a plan B, there is always time to have a plan B. All right, I wasn't successful at this, what next? What can I do next? It's no sense you curl up in a ball. What are you going to do? Curl up in a ball and die? No, life doesn't work that way. And especially if you're a young person now coming out of high school, it is unfortunate, but you have so many more disappointments to be faced with. And if you have not done so well, this is just one aspect of life's disappointment. So get up and go again. You will definitely be fine. At this age, in my 30s, if I can tell my teen self something, it would be that life goes on regardless of what happens. Once you are living and breathing, there is always an opportunity, and there are always chances. The question is, the bottom line is, what do you do with those opportunities and chances that present themselves for you? You don't ignore them. You go after them. And I'm just going to leave that here for now. Once again, I want to say thank you very much for Ganesh Mahipaul for coming on Facing the Nation today and sharing. Of course, those of you now tuning in, you missed a great one. I always urge you, go to my YouTube channel and Facebook pages, and you will find today's program there in its entirety. I didn't say hello to those of you who are viewing on the CNS Channel 6 Facebook channel, but hello to you always. Thanks for always tuning in, not only to this program, but all the other programs that you tune into the CNS Facebook page for, and we thank you so very much for your support. Unfortunately, this is where I have to leave you from today's program. As always, I urge you to be good Guyanese citizens. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other. I am Malika Ramsey. This has been Facing the Nation, and thanks for watching.